Um, so overall, there was a lot of kind of unethical coercion of race and whatnot. They lied to the men about what the study was about just to kind of trick them to all enroll. They didn't actually give them the right treatment afterwards when they developed an actual cure. Just a lot of things that wouldn't fly today. But what I want to kind of just end on unethically here is that these weren't the two, only things that happened that were unethical in the 1900s. There's just, for this entire kind of period, some race issues. One of the things that this Henrietta book that I was reading pointed out that I wasn't aware of was that since at least the 1800s, Black oral history has been filled with tales of, quote, night doctors who kidnapped Black people for research. To discourage slaves from meeting or escaping, slave owners told tales of gruesome research done on Black bodies. Then they covered themselves in white sheets and crept around at night, posing as spirits coming to infect Black people with disease or steal them for research. And those sheets are eventually what gave rise to the white hooded cloaks of the Ku Klux Klan. So we talked about some lack of consent or knowledge in Henrietta's case. And similar to the Tuskegee experiment, methods of coercion based on race were super common. So this incited fear that Black people were going to get kidnapped for research. They were going to have just gruesome work done on their bodies. They were going to be infected. This is obviously not okay, not something that would be allowed in today's age. So coercion based on race is something super unethical in research. But also just the sample that you're choosing. So besides individuals of a different race, you often had prisoners who were coerced into being research subjects. So even at our own Ohio State Penitentiary, which I found kind of interesting. So this is a virologist who wanted to see how healthy people reacted to cancerous injections, just to compare it to how cancerous people reacted to cancerous injections. So in May of 1956, he placed an ad in the Ohio State Penitentiary newsletter. And he chose this area because the inmates were cooperative in other studies without resistance, which again, alarm bells should ring here. And he began injecting prisoners with Henrietta Lacks's cells and grew tumors on their arms. And one of the quotes from a prisoner being like, media had asked prisoners, why did you agree to do this? They're like, well, I believe the wrong that I've done in the eyes of society, this might make it right. So as you can kind of imagine, prisoners kind of don't have a choice. So one thing that's super important in research is making sure that, your subjects are physically able to understand what's going on, make an informed choice, be able to opt out without fear of retribution, that kind of thing. So using prisoners and giving them tumors, that's not okay. And then the last example I want to use is using samples of individuals who were mentally challenged. This was something that was super common too. Again, a quote from The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. One of Henrietta's daughters, Elsie, was mentally handicapped. She was sent to the Hospital for the Negro Insane, which, again, where scientists often conducted research on patients there without consent, including a study titled pneumoencephalographic and school x-ray studies in 100 epileptics. So this involved drilling holes into the skulls of research subjects, draining the fluid surrounding their brains. Fluid's good for our brains, just to be clear, and pumping air or helium into the skull in place of that fluid, just so that you could take a crisp x-ray, which this entire process caused permanent brain damage because obviously. But they did it on patients who were mentally handicapped because they didn't know any better. They were coerced into this research. So plenty of research was conducted on these individuals that they weren't informed of and would never have agreed to if they knew the consequences. But again, they're a vulnerable population.